on. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm excited to present to the Community Futures audience once again. It's always a pleasure to be involved working with Community Futures. They do some great things for rural businesses across Alberta. It's quite impressive, actually. To kick things off, though, I'd love to know who's in the room here with us. So you should have a chat button somewhere near the bottom of your screen there. Feel free to throw in your business name, what you do, a little bit of that, where you're from, where you're actually tuning in from. That'll help me to know which parts of the presentation to maybe focus on and which ones to maybe gloss over if there's nobody it applies to in the room. While you're doing that, I'll introduce myself to you as well. So again, my tech knowledge is pretty bad here. So John, did the screen just change? Am I doing it right? I can't see. Perfect. I am not the most tech savvy guy out there. But yeah, I'll introduce myself to you real quick here, just so you know who's talking to you and the background that I come from. So as John said, my name is Cliff Turner. I've been a part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in one shape or form for several years. My entrepreneurial bug bit me when I was a kid. Actually, I was probably like 12 years old when I tried out my first business idea. I lived on a farm, and my stepdad encouraged me because he was an entrepreneurial minded man. He was like, "Why don't I try to make some money?" And so I went to the local Hutterite colony. He took me down there with him, and we got a bunch of chickens, like laying hens. And so I got these chickens. I got some feed. I built a little coop for them, and started feeding these chickens and selling the eggs to the neighbors and family. Just people who wanted to support the young kid trying to make a buck. But I made a pretty bad business decision, and this was my first lesson in business. Is I didn't build the fence quite as well as I should have, and some coyotes got in one night and ate a lot of my chickens. Some were left over, which was good, but I made another bad decision right after that. And I decided, you know what my chickens need is some guards, and our dogs don't like the coyotes. So I'm going to put the dogs in the pen with the chickens the next night. And you can kind of guess what happened there. Business was pretty much over. So that was my first stab at entrepreneurship. Learned a lot real fast. But then things went a little better when I was an adult. I went over to Lithuania in 1999 and was part of a medical mission there. And we did a bunch of other projects as well. But the most fun part for me was the medical mission. I wasn't strictly an entrepreneur there, but it was an entrepreneurial minded role, because what we were doing was collecting medical supplies in Canada and the US and donating them to orphanages, old folks' homes, clinics, and things like this that had fallen through the cracks after Lithuania had gained its independence from the USSR. So my job was to be off around the country, just trying to find places where we could help out. And I really liked the feel of kind of making my own schedule, figuring these things out, having to be creative with solutioning. And when I came back to Canada in 2005, I just thought, you know what, I want that feeling forever. So I jumped into entrepreneurship. So I founded two different businesses. One was a good learning process. The other one was quite successful, and I sold that in 2019. It was a roofing and siding company. After that, I didn't know what to build next, so I jumped just into the ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs. So I worked with a national small business advocacy group, interviewing entrepreneurs and hearing what their problems were and how we could, present that at the federal level in Ottawa. And then I eventually ended up here at ATB, where I'm an entrepreneur ecosystem strategist. So my job now is being out in community, finding what resources exist for entrepreneurs, helping to amplify those where we can, coming in to help with them, like we're doing with Community Futures right now. But then most importantly, finding entrepreneurs who need those resources and connecting them so that they get to the place where they can find the help. Oh, I see Sherry from the Lollipop Thrift Shop is in here. Awesome. I still have the pen that you gave me, and it works great. So anyway, that's enough about me. Let's move into the presentation here. The team that I work with is called the Entrepreneurial Growth Team. So basically, the QR code there that you see will take you to our webpage. I'll be referencing a lot of things from that website through the presentation. So if you can shoot that up on your phone or just visit atbentrepreneurscenter.com, you'll have that ready when the time comes. But you'll find a lot of good resources on there. We've got pre-recorded webinars that you can access at any time, templates for business planning, cash flow forecasting. We've got a lot of different articles on there. going over different topics that entrepreneurs tend to need to see. Like recently, one was posted on adjusting your pricing without fear, which is a huge topic for entrepreneurs, of course. And then there's something on there called the Entrepreneur Resource Network, which I'd encourage you to visit. It basically has all of the different ecosystem partners around the province that help entrepreneurs. So even if it's something that ATB can't help you with, we can connect you with these partners where you'll find the help that you can that you need. Community Futures, of course, is one of those partners, and they're on that page. So like I say, atbentrepreneur.com, or grab that QR code real quick. Now, of course, what we're here to talk about today is this kind of unpredictable world we're living in the past little while. If you're anything like me, when you wake up in the morning, it's like, I want to check the news. I want to know what's changed, but I sort of don't either, because it's also unpredictable and just kind of all over the place. So right now, we're in this, I don't know what you'd call it, not a perfect storm, but a pretty rough sea anyway, where we've got the after effects of that really high inflation that we saw from 2021 to 2022. We've had those interruptions in supply chains after COVID, and then the war in Ukraine. We've got this constantly shifting geopolitical landscape that is very hard to keep track of at the moment. On and off tariffs, announcements of them, and then they're being pulled back. Again, hard to keep track of. Loonie, the value is all over the place the last little while. But then on top of that, the stuff that maybe doesn't make the news is we've got these changing customer expectations all the time. With technology moving into business, that's constantly shifting underneath us as well. At the same time, we've got employee expectations shifting when it comes to remote work and hybrid work situations and things. So all of these things are still sort of bubbling up underneath the surface. And as business owners, we need to figure out, how do we deal with all of this stuff? So it just leaves us in a place where a lot of business owners I talk to are just, confidence is kind of shaken. Nobody really wants to make any big moves right now, it seems like, because it's just a matter of what's going on. How do we wait this through? Can we wait this through? So today's presentation is much more just about, how do we look at our business and make sure that no matter what happens in the headlines tomorrow, we have a resilient business that we can move through that challenge. So we're not going to spend too much time digging into tariffs or anything like that. It's more about, how do we build something that can survive it? So to kind of kick off that idea, I like this analogy of boats on the sea when it comes to this situation that we're in. Because if you look at the sea, literally, if you have a boat on the sea, you cannot control that sea no matter what. It might be calm one day, there might be stormy another, huge waves another day, whatever it throws at you. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. And in reality, that's kind of where we're at with all of these things, especially with the tariffs and the geopolitical landscape around us. There's not much we can do to control it. Like yesterday, we had our chance to vote, which is great. We have some input there. But on the day-to-day, there's not really much we can do to change the situation. That's being decided by other people in positions that we don't have. So we have to view it like that sea, like a sailor would see the ocean, not as something that we can control, but something we have to react to, and we have to figure out how to navigate. And so the idea of putting a little less focus on the sea itself, know what's out there, of course, know what it's doing, but not be too worried about the details, and looking more at our ship. How have we got our ship built to make sure that whatever that sea does today, tomorrow, and next week, our boat will survive? So there's a few key principles I'd just like to highlight to begin here, and then we'll dig into some more specifics afterwards. But the principles are on your screen right now. The first, of course, is adaptability. And this I liken to having a map on your ship, right? So that you can see the whole map, where your port is that you're trying to get to, but you also know, hey, there's alternatives. I can use different routes. Here's where they are. Or maybe I need to land in a different port first to refuel before I get to my destination. Knowing where the options are is part of that. And knowing that makes you adaptable. So you're not just, no matter what happens with the sea, I'm going this way, no matter what, right? You have to be able to be adaptable. Paired with that is operational agility. So you might know where you want to go and you might know what your options are, but do you have a rudder that's big enough and strong enough to turn your ship quick enough to be able to pivot and take these other routes to other ports possibly, if you need to adapt? So that's your operational agility. If you're a small business, that is one of your superpowers, because the bigger a business gets, the harder it is to shift course, right? Same as a ship. A big cruise liner takes a lot longer to turn around than a little tiny, powerboat. So if you're a small business, this is one of the things you can actually cling to when it comes to these unpredictable waters. You are probably very nimble. So another one that we'll look at a little bit is financial discipline. So I think of this as the fuel in your boat. So when you're off at sea, you want to know how much fuel you have, how fast does it burn, where can you get more if you start to run low. So it's the same thing with your finances. Do you know your numbers good enough that no matter what happens out there, you know what you have access to and how to use it strategically to make sure that you get through the challenges? On top of that is customer centricity. This is one that often gets lost when we're looking at these ideas of making a business more resilient. But on a ship, you'd have to think about your passengers, whether that's 2 people or 1,000 people. They need to know that you're a good captain guiding that ship if you expect them to stick with you. You don't want some kind of mutiny on your hands, right? So it's the same thing here. You have to be customer centered in your mind in order to survive a lot of these challenges, because you need those people. And then lastly, proactivity is something that we'll talk about a lot in this presentation as well. So in the ship analogy, of course, this would be your knowledge of the problems that could occur and your emergency plans to deal with them. So knowing all the possible changes and have solutions ready. So with your business, it's just that idea of being proactive, being ahead of things rather than reactive. And when something happens, you're trying to figure it out in the moment. Have those contingency plans. That little tagline at the bottom there, I kind of like. I stole that, I'll be perfectly honest, but a resilient business plans for disruption, not perfection, which is absolutely true. If we plan for everything to be perfect, good luck, because nothing's ever perfect. The experienced entrepreneurs on the call will know that that is 100% true. So we do have to plan for the possible disruptions. So let's dig into this. I should say too, if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat, or I don't know if you can put your hand up on this program. I'm not sure how Zoom works, but if you do have any questions, throw them in the chat and I'll do my best to get to them as we go. All right, so let's start with our financial planning and our financial foundations. The key here is you need to have visibility of your cash and you need to have flexibility with your cash when we are in a situation like this. So in other words, like I said before about the fuel, you need to know where your cash is and what it's doing and how you can use it effectively. And in some cases, how do you get more cash if you need it, an influx of cash? And honestly, this is true of any business at any time, not just in turbulent times like we're feeling right now. This is just wise, even when things are perfect sailing. Know where your cash is and what it's doing. Now, recommendation for this, if you're an established business, is just kind of have about a 6-month cash flow forecast, just rolling continually. Now, if you opened up that website I told you before, atbentrepreneurscenter.com, you'll be able to find a cash flow forecasting tool on there that we've developed to help with this. So you can actually go through, and we actually have it set up for 2 years because that's what we ask for when somebody's coming in for financing from us. But for this case, you're probably just using about 6 months. But what it allows you to do is just go in and plot out what you think is going to happen over the next 6 months to the best of your knowledge. So using your past finances as a guide, try to predict those next 6 months. And then as those months happen, come back at the end of each month and input your actuals and see how far your prediction was off from what actually happened. And then adjust those remaining 5 months in accordance with what happened, and then add that 6 month on. So you always have that 6 month outlook. Now, what this will do is it'll really help you get in tune with where your business is financially and what is probably going to happen down the road. And it'll give you the ability to play with scenarios. So if you think you might have a couple of rough months 3 months from now, you can plug that into the tool, and then you can kind of see what would I have to change to make sure that we can get through those months. And it just gives you that flexibility to play with the numbers. But I do encourage everyone, whether you use our tool or another one, there's lots of them out there, do have a 6-month forecast running for yourself to keep yourself on top of things. Another tool that you might find helpful in this is the Small Business Pulse Check tool. It's on that same website, And actually, I think it was about 2, 3 weeks ago, I presented this tool to Community Futures right here with John. So if you were here for that, you already know about it. If you weren't, it is on the website there. And basically what it does is it gives you a way to input just 6 basic numbers from your business each month. And it graphs some things out to you so you can see some the trajectories of your numbers, and helps you see, red flags and opportunities a little earlier than usual. So I'd encourage you to use both of those to build the resilience of your business. Now, once you've got your brain around the numbers and where you think it's going over the next few months, it's also good to aim to have a cash reserve in place. Same as your personal finances. It's always good to have that buffer, right? Oh, thanks for putting the links in the chat there, John. Very, very smart. You're way ahead of me. So yeah, on top of that, have that cash reserve. So I like to advise at least a 3-month reserve of your operating expenses. If you can get 6 months, that's awesome. That can be pretty hard to set aside that much, but if you can have 3 months, that will put you ahead of just about every other business out there. When I was working with that lobby group during COVID, it was surprising to me how many businesses that seemed very successful on the surface had no cash reserves. It blew my mind. And a lot of them were really struggling when COVID hit, because especially the ones where it hit them hard, like the hospitality industries, restaurants, things like this, they needed that cash reserve right now and didn't have it in a lot of cases. And it, like I say, it kind of blew my mind how many didn't have access to cash. So this is kind of a superpower to have. If you can have 3 months of operating expenses sitting for if a catastrophe like that hits, at least that builds you that time to figure out how to deal with it. Another thing to keep in mind too is if things do start to go a bit sideways, whether this is, during these times where things are rocky or even during good times, if your finances start to go in a direction that you're not too happy with, don't avoid your advisors and your financial partners. I know it's very tempting to. I've been in that situation myself, and it's hard to reach out and talk to people when things aren't going your way. But your accountant, your bankers, your bookkeepers, they can help. And it's better to talk to them early so that you can make plans to avoid a catastrophe rather than talking to them when the catastrophe hits, because there's usually a lot less options at that point. So if you do find yourself with all of this tariff talk and everything, struggling with revenue or profit for that matter, talk to your advisors early, get their advice, and start setting up paths forward. Another thing to do is make sure that you understand all the fees and everything that are tied around what you do. This often gets overlooked because we really look at our revenue, we really look at our net profit at the end of the day. But a lot of times we don't dig into the details of what it's actually costing us to do business with the things that we're buying. So the inputs for our business, cost of goods sold. So there's a lot to look at there. So whatever you're buying for your business, whatever it happens to be, look in there and just see what else is involved in the cost of that item or that service. Is there shipping costs that you're maybe just forgetting to look at? They appear on your financial reports, but you're not really thinking about them. Look at those shipping costs. Are they justified? Can you make them better? Environmental fees might apply depending on what you do, and they can be quite hidden on invoices. Service fees, taxes, know what's attached to each of your expenses. And then of course the tariffs. Know what's happening with what you deal with those tariffs. On that ATB website, you should be able to find a link on there, and I'll give you a link later to a tariff finder that the federal government has. And it's actually kind of cool. If you just Google Canada Tariff Finder, you'll probably find it right away on Google. But you can input what it is that you're selling and where you're selling it and where you're buying it from, and it'll pop up any tariffs that you're subject to right there. So it's very handy. But know those numbers. Don't just assume that you're getting the normal deal. Make sure that you know what those are, and make sure that you can find ways to change them if you can, especially those shipping costs, service fees, and things like that. And lastly, on the financial front, know how much credit you have as a backup. A lot of bankers kind of want to stay away from having too much credit available because it is risky. But I'm a bit of a different mindset there. I feel good having credit available to me in case of an emergency, but just making sure that I'm using it diligently, right? Because nobody wants to get in debt problems. But for you with your business, make sure you know what you have available for an emergency situation. So with this, I'm talking about your overdraft on your checking account, any line of credit that you have for your business, even credit cards. Those shouldn't be used for for emergency situations unless you really have to, because the interest isn't that great. But know that it's there, because they might be the thing that makes or breaks you if you do have a catastrophe hit from any side, whether it's tariffs or another pandemic or whatever it happens to be. Credit can get you through there. You just have to use it very wisely and prepare to pay it back, of course. So this is one of the things to really pay attention to. Know your finances. And like I say, if you use those two tools, the pulse check tool and the cash flow forecasting tool, that'll give you a really good handle on what you've got going on. It's a good starting point. Secondly, supply chains, of course, have been top of tongue for quite a while here, especially starting during COVID, and it just doesn't seem to stop. There's been a lot of interruptions to supply chains and just changes to them that are hard to deal with. So talk about the US first, I guess. If you're sourcing key items from the US for your business, this is the time to kind of reassess your risk exposure. The US has been a very solid trading partner with Canada for a long, long time. Right now, it's going through a bit of a metamorphosis, I guess. Hopefully, we'll be back to being strong partners in the near future, but there's no guarantee of that. So my advice would be just know the regulations and the possible tariffs around what you deal in when it comes to the US that could affect your supply. And just try to see, are they something that's vulnerable in the current situation? Like I say, hopefully we'll be back to something normal with the US in the near future, but there's no guarantees around that. Another thing to do, of course, and we've been seeing this a lot here in Canada, the whole elbows up idea and everything, you try to find Canadian suppliers. I've been doing this personally and business-wise, and it just feels good, to be honest. But do try to find Canadian suppliers. A lot of times they are going to be slightly more expensive than importing from the States, but that will save you on volatility in this particular climate, right? If you have a Canadian supplier, even if they're a backup supplier, just have one ready to go. Because if something does happen, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to get what you need from a Canadian supplier than anybody outside of the country. So it's, even if they're not your primary supplier, have one as a backup to cover over any blips in your supply chain. And then, of course, we have the idea of friendshoring. So basically evaluating where you're getting your supplies and your inputs from, and going, am I getting these from places that are, friendly geopolitically and stable geopolitically in our relationship? Like I said before, the US has been that for the longest time. There hasn't been any doubt about it. Now it's a little bit shaky. So do kind of look at where your things are coming from. Are they coming from geopolitical allies where we probably don't have to worry too much about supply chains being interrupted or tariffs being put in place? So places like Mexico, UK, Germany, Japan, Australia even. These are places where we have a strong enough relationship. We shouldn't have to worry about it too much right now. But do pay attention to that. See where things are coming from, and make sure that you're not dealing with a company for your needed supplies that are located in a country that there may be a shift in that could change that relationship and suddenly make it hard for you to get what you need to run your business. Aim to reduce your reliance on that kind of a relationship and move it to where you know that it can be solid. Another thing with supply chains, no matter who you're dealing with, whether they're in Canada, US, or somewhere else, make sure that you have good communication with them. I find that this is one that that gets overlooked a lot. And I overlooked it with my first business, which was one of the reasons why it ran into some problems. But in my second business, I learned, know your suppliers, have contacts there, and make sure that they know who you are, so you actually have a relationship. What you don't want is that the first time you're talking to that person is when there's a problem. That's just going to be more difficult, because now you're going to have to build rapport, establish a relationship to get anywhere, so that you're not just a number. So whoever your suppliers are, make sure that you have a contact there, know who they are, take them out for coffee if you can, if they're local. If they're not, get on a Zoom call. Just make sure you have a friendly face there, so that if something does go weird, you have somebody to contact that already knows who you are and you have a relationship with. That can save you tons of time and money. So I think the biggest thing here is just create options for yourself. Have these relationships with different suppliers, know where they are, know which ones might be a little bit more unreliable than others, but make sure you have options. If your supply chain comes from one place through one funnel to you, and that's all you've ever done, and it's all you've ever looked at, that is recipe for disaster, because we don't know what might be interrupted over this next few months or a year. So make sure that you have options, preferably Canadian options, and make sure that those people know who you are and you have a relationship with them. A last thought on this too is you may want to rethink your supply or your inventory, your stock, whatever you decide to call it, just in case supply chains do get interrupted. You might want to rethink, rather than thinking, having it just exactly what you need to get through the next few months based on your sales projections, to having some just in case stock there too. Now, of course, if you're selling food or something like this, you can't do this. But if there are non-perishable things, you can definitely build yourself that little buffer. So it's almost like having that cash reserve of 3 months. Have yourself maybe a couple of weeks of inventory reserve too, in climates like this, just in case things go a little bit sideways. That way, if the supply chain does get interrupted, you can keep running for a couple of weeks while that gets figured out. Give you a chance to talk to some of those alternative suppliers or fix the supply chain that you were working with. Only you'll know for your business what that means. Just try to predict, if your supply chain did get interrupted, how long of an interruption do you think that would be? And then try to have stock that could cover over that. That way your customers won't see you as somebody who ran into trouble and they go to somewhere else. They can continually come back and do business with you without being interrupted. Does anybody have any questions so far? I feel like I'm plowing through this stuff pretty fast, but nothing's come up in the chat here. So I'll give it a couple seconds and take a sip of water, and then I'll move on if nobody has questions. All right. If not, let's move on to the next one. On that topic of customers being able to deal with you even if you have some interruptions, customers are the key when it comes to anything in business, right? But especially when we're dealing with turbulent environments. So the advice here is really double down on your customers. Make sure that they feel valued by you. Because now more than ever, your customers need to have confidence in you in being able to supply the service or the products that you supply. Because really, they're going through all of these same things that we're going through, whether you're a business owner or a consumer. Tariffs and geopolitical uncertainty are affecting everybody. So it's not like they're just sitting back and not being affected. So you need to bring that into your thought process and accommodate for them and be that place where they can feel that they won't be interrupted with their daily life if they keep dealing with you. So be a stable presence for them, basically. The worst thing to do if you run into troubles is to go dark and just stop communicating with your clients. That will eventually make them think, okay, I need to move somewhere else to get what I need. If anything, evaluate how much you do communicate with your customers and try to find a way to even increase that communication a little bit. Like, you don't want to be that person that hounds them all the time, of course, but how can you increase your communication frequency with valuable things, information that might be helpful to them? So some of the things you might want to look at is just trying to see how can you make their life simpler by maybe bundling some services or products in that they might be shopping for elsewhere, so they can get it all from you. That helps you because you're generating more revenue, helps them because it just makes it simpler than going 3 different places, right? You package it for them. It might be something like creating how-to content for whatever it is that you sell. How do you get best use of this product, or how do you use it most efficiently so it lasts longer, whatever it happens to be for your industry. But try to get that kind of communication going where you're giving them value. You're not necessarily asking for sales right now, but you're showing that you're there for them and you're a constant, even in this tumultuous economic world that we're in right now. The best way to do that, of course, and the easiest, is digitally. Using digital marketing, of course, is old hat now, but it's becoming even more and more prevalent for small businesses, I find. So really invest in your digital presence. If a customer goes to your website and it's hard to navigate, or they don't know where to find exactly what they need, they're going to turn somewhere else eventually, right? People, when they're shopping online or even researching online, want information quickly and simply. And it is a good time to invest in that for businesses, because as we go through all of this with the tariffs and the supply chain interruptions and everything, people know they might have to jump here or there to get what they need. But if you are communicating with them constantly, you're giving them a simple, easy to use digital package to understand what they need to do to interact with you, you'll be way ahead of the game. So if you're using e-commerce, or people are ordering online from you, or even if they're just researching products that you're offering before they come into your shop or call you or whatever it is, make sure that that is an easy and simple experience for them. That's what creates repeat business, because people like to shop where it's easy for them. And it'll also get your referral business because people talk about good experiences. That's one thing when you're doing it in person. It's another thing when you're doing it online, but they get the same results. So do invest in your digital presence there. And while you're doing that, another thing to think about is your messaging. This is the time to really dig into who you are as a business owner, especially with the Canadian made or Canadian business type messages, right? Like I mentioned before, the whole elbows up thing is becoming more and more popular. We're starting to understand in our country again that we need to support our local businesses, and hopefully that will start to expand across provinces too, where it'll be a little easier to trade across provincial borders. But this message is really starting to ring loud and clear. So if you can say that your products are Canadian made, or that you're a Canadian owned company, whatever it happens to be, don't be shy to shout that out. That is making a big difference right now. You've probably seen it in the grocery stores, where a lot of the chains now, they're having the little Canadian flags by all of the Canadian products. And boy, does it ever look different when you go into a shopping or a grocery store now. You know, that stuff's moving. American products, not quite as much as they used to. Eh? I know it's affected my shopping habits. That's one of the first things that my eyes are looking for now, is the Canadian flag. So find a way to integrate that into your business in this particular scenario, and I think it'll be helpful for you. And then, of course, just a little quick win on there. One of the things that I see business owners do a lot is, if they can't help a business owner with exactly what they want, they just leave it alone. They don't follow through. And there's so much to be gained by helping somebody that you maybe can't help exactly the way they want. So let's say that you have a product that's got a tariff on it, and it's now being more expensive, right? And this customer just doesn't want to pay that extra. Have some alternatives for them. Just like you want to have alternatives with your supply chain, have alternatives for your customers. Build those in. Know how to help them, even if that tariff is directly affecting the product that they want. Again, depending on your business, this may or may not be possible, but thoughts to keep in mind. So that's our customers. Make sure that you're in the tumultuous world that we're in right now. Don't forget your customer. Double down on what you're doing with them. Earn their trust, and they'll stick with you through the rough sea, right? Like on that boat, you don't want passengers that don't trust the captain. They'll mutiny, right? You want passengers that trust the captain and will stick through and even help out as the boat goes through the storm. Now, one thing to remember as well is you're definitely not alone in this. Every single business owner in this country is being affected by this. Every single individual is. So there's a lot of help out there to get us through this. So I've outlined some on here. But there's a lot more if you check through too, and a lot of these will lead you to others. So I'll just run you through them real basically here. So the first one I'd like to point out is our ATB resources that we've got in place. So our tariff hub is one of them. Let me see if I can get that up on the screen. I apologize ahead of time for my lack of tech savvy, but there is a link to it right there. And now I've lost my presentation. Oh man, computers are great. Anyway, that's a link to the tariff hub. So basically what you'll see there is ATB is trying to keep up to date on everything that's happening with the US tariffs on Canada and reciprocal tariffs after that. So it's constantly changing. Our economists are pulling their hair out because it's hard for them to keep track of what's going on. But we're trying to take anything that is solid and put it onto that website. So there's tips on there for you on the personal side and on the business side. And that's where you'll find that Canada Tariff Finder as well. There's a link in there for that. The one that I mentioned earlier, where you can put in your product, where you're doing business, and it'll tell you if tariffs apply and how much. So that's a great one to just bookmark and have handy. As I say, we try to keep that as up to date as possible with tips that are helpful for the current situation. Another one is the ATB newsletter called the 24. Now, this one, you can just Google ATB 24 and it'll take you there. If you subscribe to the ATB Owl in the past, it's the same newsletter. So basically what it is, it's our economists, every day they put out one tip that is relative to small business in Alberta, based on the economic situation for the province and the country. And they're very, very helpful. Every Friday, there is a recap where they take all of the tips from that week, they put those into a recap, and then they add a bit more detail as well. So even if you don't read it every day, read the Friday version and you'll be right up to speed. So again, just Google ATB 24. And then lastly, of course, that website that I gave you the QR code before, our Entrepreneur Center, atbentrepreneurscenter.com. As I mentioned, just a lot of templates and tools that you can use, including those two that I mentioned before, the pulse check tool and the cash flow tool. Cruise through there. Everything in there is free to use. You don't have to be an ATB customer. It's all there for you to use to get to your next stage of growth or to deal with the challenge that you're facing. If you're having trouble finding something in there, I'll put my contact information up at the end. Feel free to reach out to me. I can help you find whatever it is that you're looking for. And if we don't have it, we can probably find it with another organization that'll be helpful to you. Speaking of other organizations, that's the next section on the slide there. There's a lot of external supports coming up that are going to be handy in this whole tariff situation. I've just outlined a few of the main ones. EDC, Trade Impact Protection Program, is one of them. This only applies to businesses that are actually exporting from Canada to another country. But it can be very handy. They offer a lot of different supports and guidance and advice, which is helpful. But they also offer guarantees, which can basically, they come on as a guarantor if you're dealing with a bank and trying to get a loan for operating capital in order to export. EDC can come in and actually help you qualify for larger loans or loans that you might not have qualified for if you qualify for their criteria. So it's something to look at if you are exporting. They also do risk mitigation for currency fluctuations, and they have credit insurance for exporters and things like this. So if you're exporting, definitely check out the EDC Trade Impact Protection Program. We've also got the Government of Canada, and who knows, this might change because we just had an election yesterday. So we'll see where this goes. But they did introduce some remittance and corporate tax payments dates to be deferred, just to help with the tariff situation. So a lot of the things that we're doing April 2nd, they moved out to June 30th with no interest or penalties. So if you do need to kind of defer some of that, you can. Do watch the Canadian government website though, because I think a lot more supports are probably going to be introduced. I don't know what they'll be. I don't know when they'll be, but I have this feeling that it's going to be a lot like when COVID hit and the federal government stepped in and said, hey, you know what, if you're being affected, we can help. So do keep your eye on the federal government sites and see what comes up there. This deferment is just the only thing that's been announced so far. A last one that might be good to check out in this situation is BDC, so their Pivot to Grow program. I'd encourage you to check out BDC anyway. They have a ton of good material on their website and really good advisory services as well. So do check out BDC. They're very helpful. But the Pivot to Grow program might be something in a specific situation that could be helpful. They've basically introduced some loans that are specifically to help industries that are being affected directly by the tariffs. So if you are seeing direct effects from the tariff on your business, this might be an avenue that you can go to check out how you can get financial support to deal with that. On top of that, of course, there's lots of local supports, and these are sometimes even more important because as we try to shop local and we try to support local, if you don't know your local community, it's hard to do that. So get out and just see what's out there to support you locally in the business community. So Community Futures, of course, a huge shout out to them. They've got offices all across the province. Lac La Biche here is where John's at, but they're all over. So if you're somewhere else, there's a Community Futures office around you. Um, but then you've got your local chambers of commerce. Each one is a bit different, but there's probably some supports that you can find there. If nothing else, meet the people there because they're part of the community, and it'll help you develop those local relationships to keep revenue flowing. Advocacy groups are becoming more and more important again. CFIB is a big one federally, of course, but then your Chamber of Commerce is probably a local advocacy group as well. Get to know who those people are that advocate for what you do. You probably have some industry specific advocacy groups as well. Get involved with them, have a voice, and make sure that that voice is heard collectively through these groups. That is powerful. And with everything changing the way it is right now, that's how we're going to find paths through, like these supports from the Canadian government. It's groups like CFIB and other advocacy groups that bring those suggestions and the pain that business owners are feeling to the forefront, so the government has to listen and do something about it. So do get involved with them. Also, just tap into your local grassroots type supports. There's a lot of just privately put together networking groups and mastermind groups and things like this that you can be a part of. Your Chamber of Commerce will probably know who's involved in them, so that's a good place to start to find them. But it can be incredible. When I had my roofing business, I was part of a mastermind group. We had 12 business owners, and we'd get together once a month, and it was a full day, 12 hours. And what we do is we usually have a speaker come in or something just to give us a bit of something to chew on. But then the better part of the day was we each get a turn where we would present a challenge or an opportunity that we had to the group, and we'd get the feedback of every other entrepreneur in that room. And I tell you, that was one of the most valuable things I ever did for my business, to be able to get that many perspectives from different industries and different levels of experience. I learned more from that group than I learned anywhere else. So I'd encourage you to look around for something like that in your community. If there isn't one, build one. I'm actually running a pilot project right now with ATB where I've built one of these mastermind groups, and we're running through our first cohort right now just to see how that'll work out. And it's going really well. But they're super easy to set up. If there's not one in your community, get a bunch of business owners together, start sharing with each other, start sharing your challenges, asking each other questions and supporting each other. Incredibly valuable, especially when the world is a bit of a mess right now. So in the end, it's just remember that you're not alone. Don't try to be the entrepreneur that just cocoons through all of this. It's really hard to survive on your own. Everybody out there is dealing with the same thing, and everybody has good suggestions and things that you can learn and ways that you can help them. So just reach out. Collaboration is the way to multiply your resilience for sure. So that's my soapbox for that one. Make sure you use the support around you. Again, if you'd like more details on any of these programs that I shared, or maybe there's other ones that you'd like to know potential of, feel free to contact me afterwards. Or even if you just have a challenge and you're not sure where the resource is, I'm happy to help you research that. Like I say, I'll put my contact information up at the end of the presentation here. And lastly, your team. So your employees and your partners, contractors possibly. This is the other asset that you have at your disposal through turbulent times that it's incredibly important to pay attention to, because this is the worst time to start losing staff or something like this. It'd just be another problem to deal with, right? But the idea here is really leverage who's around the table with you. Know who they are and what they have to offer. It's very easy to have an employee that's doing one specific thing, and they have a bunch of skills that you might not even know about, or maybe you saw a glimpse of, but didn't really explore. The people that are around you might be able to offer a lot more as far as getting through this than you think that they can. And you might be able to support them in ways that they didn't think either. But the idea here is, with your team, make sure that you're building trust. That's the key at the bottom of it all. Your employees have to trust you, and you have to trust your employees. And the best way to do that is just be transparent. Don't try to hide the challenges that you're facing in your business from your employees. They'll know that you're facing challenges, right? It's kind of like a family, right? If mom and dad are fighting, the kids know it. No matter how hard they try to hide it, the kids know it. It's the same thing in a business. If the business is struggling, no matter how hard the owner tries to hide it, employees know it. They're not dumb. They figure things out, right? So be transparent. Let them know, yeah, here's the problem that we're facing. But don't just do that. Don't just be vulnerable, but ask for feedback. Get their ideas, involve them in problem solving, because this is where you actually build a team that can work together when they feel a sense of ownership along with your vulnerability in it. So ask them, what are you hearing out there? What are customers saying? What are your friends saying about this business? What do you think about this business? What's working? What's not working? Ask them these questions and then really listen. But don't just listen, act on what they tell you. Even if it's maybe not a direction you want to go, act on a little piece of it, or explain why, and get them to see the other side and walk with you on that side. Ask for the suggestions. Get them to buy in that way. That way they'll feel, even though they're not technically an owner of the company, they'll feel some ownership of what you do, and they'll feel like a valuable cog in the wheel. Invest in upskilling them. Like I mentioned, the hardest thing right now is to lose a bunch of employees when you're already dealing with all this other stuff. Invest in them so that they want to stay. Help them upskill. If they want to learn something that applies to the job, help them get that certification or whatever it happens to be. If they're just interested in seeing a bit more behind the curtain, bring them in, teach them what you can. This will build that relationship that will help them be with you for the long term. Through these kinds of methods, then your staff will get that sense of ownership. And as you move through these struggles, they're not just going to be dragged along with you. They'll be there at the front, moving through the struggles, helping you get through, right? And that's a much more powerful position to be in. That's what gets that boat nice and strong, right? And that's kind of where we end off. So these are all the kind of core things to think about, so that no matter what the headlines say tomorrow, if there's new tariffs or less tariffs, or the US decides they don't want to trade with us at all anymore, who knows what's going to happen, right? But if you have your boat ready, then no matter what that sea throws at you, you'll have a good chance of survival. So these next steps are just a little way to end this off. So just remember that the best time to start building your resilience is right now. Even if your business isn't being hit by these things yet, start building your processes and your resilience and these types of tips into your business right now, so that if and when it does hit your business, you're ready, right? Like that, what's that saying? The best time to start was yesterday. That's exactly it here. So again, review your financials, audit your supply chain, re-engage with your customers, make sure that all that communication is there, and then reach out and use all those resources that are around you. There's a plethora of resources for entrepreneurs, depending on your industry and what you do. Look around for them. Like I mentioned, I'm happy to help you find some. That's kind of my job as an ecosystem strategist, is to figure out where these things are. So feel free to reach out. And just remember, hope is not a strategy. You can hope for a great business, but that's not a strategy. Preparation is the strategy. So you got to do the work. So use the tools, build those relationships, and know your numbers, so that you got a strong ship to get through this sea. Now, hopefully the headlines are good tomorrow, but who knows, right? We'll see. In the meantime, there is a QR code to my LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn. If not, you can email me. It's just cturner@atb.com, which I'll throw in the chat here real fast. There we go. So yeah, do feel free to reach out. The other QR code will take you to the Entrepreneur Center, where a lot of those tools that I mentioned are outlined there, including that Entrepreneur Resource Network, which will let you see what organizations exist around you that you could tap into. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and toss it back to John, or whatever you want to do next, John.
Any questions, anyone? Well, I guess everyone's satisfied, Cliff, with your presentation.
Yeah. Oh,
Everyone's
thank you, Brenda.
speechless.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so if everyone else is good, so for May, we have four more four more workshops. One of them is with Cliff. When to get a business loan and how to use them properly or effectively. That will be on May 31st at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. For more other workshops, you can visit our page, our website, events.cfllb.com. There's a question from Sherry. Oh, no, not a question. Yeah, she just said she likes the business pools too.
Right on. Glad to hear it. Glad it's useful.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's for it, Cliff. Thank you for taking the time again for doing this presentation with us. And yeah,
Good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
yeah. See you on May for the for the next presentation. Everyone else, thank you for joining us. Hope you have a good rest of the day.
Bye bye.